Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your hats, because the wild frontier is about to reveal a tale like no other. Picture a rugged Montana rancher galloping across a wind-swept prairie drawn by a distant cry for help and discovering a mysterious woman clinging to life in the raging current. What unfolds next is a whirlwind of forbidden secrets, glittering gold, and dangerous men willing to kill for treasure. This is a saga of courage, loyalty, and love tested by gunfights, betrayal, and the untamed spirit of the Old West. Stay tuned to witness how one rescue changes everything forever. Emerson. M. McAllister was a man shaped by the rugged land around him. His ranch, the Thunder Creek Spread, was situated on the banks of the Big Hole River in southwestern Montana. At first light, he'd set out as he often did, checking fences and leading his buckskin mare, Clementine, along the riverbank. The grass shimmered with morning dew. Wildflowers dotted the rolling hillsides like bright confetti. Up above, the sky was painted with soft pinks and oranges as the sun inched over the horizon. He hadn't expected anything out of the ordinary. The previous night had passed uneventfully. Coyotes howling in the distance, a few hoots from owls that roosted in the cottonwood trees. But as he rode along the gentle bend in the Big Hole River, he spotted something that made his heart clench. A figure bobbed in the water. At first glance, it seemed like a bundle of clothes or driftwood swirled around by the current. But then he saw an arm, thin, pale, reaching desperately for a rock jutting out from the bank. Without hesitation, M dismounted, letting Clementine roam free, and scrambled down the muddy slope. The sound of rushing water filled his ears. He reached for the figure, a woman, her hair tangled across her face. She gasped her lips, a bluish tint, as frigid water splashed around her shoulders. The river was moving faster than usual, fed by melting snowpacks in the high country. Every muscle in M's body strained as he clasped her by the wrist, struggling to find solid footing on the slick rocks. "Easy," he murmured, trying to sound gentle, despite his own pounding heart. "I've got..." She stared at him with wide, frightened eyes, barely able to keep her head above the water. Her grip was weak, and every second threatened to pull her under. M clenched his teeth and finally hauled her toward the embankment, dragging her onto the gravelly shore. She coughed violently, spitting out water as her chest heaved with ragged breaths. M shrugged out of his oilskin coat and draped it around the trembling woman's shoulders. She was soaked to the bone, her clothes torn. He noticed bruises on her arms. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? Had she fallen in, or had someone pushed her? For a moment, she locked eyes with him, trying to speak, but only managed a shaky whisper. M leaned closer. "Gold," she croaked before her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed against the rocky shore. Gold. The single word reverberated in M's mind. In these parts, gold had been the lure that transformed quiet valleys into rowdy boom towns almost overnight. Men traveled from as far as Europe and China, hoping to strike it rich in the streams of the frontier. But the days of the biggest gold rushes like the one in Bannock or Virginia City were mostly over. Sure, some folks still panned in remote creeks, but it was nowhere near the frenzy of decades past. Yet here she was, half drowned with a cryptic clue. Was she delirious? M didn't have time to dwell on it. First, he needed to get her warm and safe. He carefully lifted the woman in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, as if the land itself had sapped her strength. Clementine, ever the steady mare, whickered softly as M approached, cradling the stranger. "It's all right, girl," he murmured to the horse. "Let's get her home." He mounted up, settling the unconscious woman against his chest. As he turned the reins toward the ranch, M cast one last glance at the river. He had a nagging feeling that the roiling waters were guarding secrets more dangerous than a battered stranger. But for now his focus was clear, saving her life. Little did he know this act of rescue would pitch him headlong into a tangle of greed, ambition, and dusty revelations from the Old West that still had a hold on men's hearts. Back at the Thunder Creek spread, M gently placed the woman in a spare room of his modest clapboard ranch house. The place had been built by his late father, Joshua McAllister, a man known for his strong hands and big heart. M's father had arrived from Tennessee back in 1865, lured by land grants and wide-open spaces after the Civil War. Over the years, the ranch expanded to a couple thousand acres, but it had never lost its welcoming warmth. As soon as the mysterious woman was settled, M called for Ruby Hargrove, the ranch's housekeeper and cook. Ruby was a middle-aged woman with a fierce sense of loyalty. She'd cooked for the McAllister family for over a decade. When she saw the limp figure laid out on the bed, her eyes went wide with worry. "Emerson McAllister? What in heaven's name have you dragged in here?" she exclaimed, kneeling beside the bed to examine the woman's injuries. M explained quickly how he'd found the woman in the river, how she'd muttered something about gold. Ruby began to peel away the woman's wet layers and search for injuries. She discovered a nasty bruise on the stranger's left temple, deep scrapes on her arms, and a dark patch across her ribs that made her wince when touched. "I don't know if she's been robbed or what," M murmured, frowning as he noticed how worn her boots were. "There's no luggage, no saddlebag, only the clothes on her back. She must have lost everything in the water." Ruby nodded, pursing her lips. "We can't leave her like this. I'll fetch some towels, whiskey to clean the wounds, and we'll see if we can bring down that fever she's running." As Ruby busied herself with nursing duties, M stepped outside to gather his thoughts. The late morning sun cast bright rays on the ranch yard. A few ranch hands milled about, tending to chores. In the distance, he spotted Rance Kincaid, his longtime friend and foreman, cutting through the corral. Rance raised a questioning eyebrow as M approached, noticing the tension in the rancher's face. M recounted the rescue, and Rance whistled low under his breath. "That's a strange find," he said. "A woman alone in the river. Sure you didn't see any sign of an overturned wagon or broken raft?" M shook his head. "The current's too swift, and she was barely hanging on. If there was any wreckage, it's long gone downstream." He exhaled, scanning the horizon. "I've got a feeling there's more to this. She mentioned gold before she passed out." Rance scratched the stubble on his chin. "Gold. That'll bring trouble. You know how folks get around these parts when there's word of a hidden stash." M nodded. He remembered well how rumors of gold could stir up a hornet's nest of claim jumpers, thieves and men who preferred settling matters with a 6-shooter. "I reckon we keep this under our hats for now. Let's focus on her recovery. Once she's awake and coherent, we can find out what happened." Rance agreed. With that, M trudged back into the house. He could hear Ruby humming softly, the tune drifting through the open bedroom door. The woman lay still, her dark hair fanned across the pillow. Fresh bandages covered her arms. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, a faint flush coloring her cheeks. At least she was no longer ghostly pale. Over the next few hours, the stranger's condition teetered on the edge. She muttered feverish words in her delirium, sometimes calling out names M didn't recognize, Trask Aubrey, and something about the ledgers. then a phrase that made the hairs on his neck stand on end. "They'll kill me if they find me." Night settled over the ranch, a hush broken only by the distant lowing of cattle. M forced himself to take a break, grabbing a bite of stew from Ruby before returning to the stranger's side. He couldn't shake the worry from his mind. Who was after her? And what did gold have to do with it? Just before midnight, she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered as if fighting to open. M, half dozing in a chair beside the bed, jerked awake. He leaned forward gently, placing a damp cloth on her forehead. Her voice came in a rasp. Where am I?" "Safe," M said softly, relief creeping into his tone. "You're at Thunder Creek Ranch. My name is Emerson McAllister, but folks call me M." She swallowed hard, confusion fogging her gaze. I... Seeing she was struggling, M placed a reassuring hand on hers. "You can tell me when you're stronger," he said. "For now, rest. You're safe here." She nodded weakly, then slipped back into unconsciousness. M let out a slow breath. There were still no answers, but at least she was alive. He settled back in the chair, ignoring the stiffness in his muscles. He would remain by her side through the night. Unbeknownst to M, shadows gathered on the horizon. The rumor of hidden gold could not remain secret for long. By the time dawn came, the seeds of danger would already be germinating. Thunder Creek was about to face a tempest that would reshape the ranch and everyone on it, forever. Come sunrise, the stranger began to stir more frequently. Ruby coaxed her to drink warm broth and carefully fed her a little bread. M noticed the color returning to the woman's cheeks, though she still looked pale and exhausted. Finally, after letting the broth settle in her stomach, she propped herself up against the pillows. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice still gravelly. I owe you my life." M offered a kind smile. "Glad to help. Mind telling me who you are?" The woman hesitated, eyes darting around the room as though taking in her surroundings for the first time. She seemed to steel herself. "My name is Marguerite Alcott." She paused, her fingers twitching against the quilt. "I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused." M pulled over the chair and sat. "No trouble. Just a lot of questions." He said it gently, so as not to frighten her. "You were in the river. How did that happen?" A flicker of pain crossed Marguerite's features. "I was traveling south from Helena. I had business. Not legal business, but nothing I can talk about freely yet." She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, as if conjuring her next words. "I boarded a small raft with some men who said they'd help me get downriver. They betrayed me, tried to rob me. I fought back and we overturned. I remember hitting my head. That's the last thing I recall before waking here." M exchanged a look with Ruby, who stood quietly near the door. "They tried to rob you of what exactly?" he asked. Marguerite's gaze slipped to the side, and her brow furrowed in concern. "A map. It's complicated. There's an old legend in my family, something about a gold claim that never got filed properly decades ago. My father, Bryce Alcott, was a prospector who once rode with men like Calamity Jane and bumped shoulders with folks like Sheriff Seth Bullock in Deadwood. He chased every rumor of gold from the Dakotas to Montana. Most of it led him nowhere, but one time he discovered a significant deposit. He claimed he'd found a hidden vein of gold that could set our family up for life." She shifted uncomfortably, grimacing from the pain in her ribs. But before he could go back to stake the claim, he died. Em softened. "I'm sorry." Her voice wavered. "That was years ago, but I recently got my hands on an old journal of his. It had cryptic notes about a place near Bannock, something about Dead Man's Gorge, and a rock formation shaped like an eagle's wing. That's where he said the gold was." She laughed shakily. "I don't even know if the gold is real. But some men thought it was, and they wanted the map." Rubber squeaked under M's boots as he shifted his weight. "So you believe there's a fortune in gold out there?" "Waiting," Marguerite sighed. "I don't know what I believe. I only know that these men, the ones who threw me overboard, are after me. They must have caught wind of my father's journal. If the treasure is real, it's enough to buy 1,000 ranches, enough to make men kill." She stared at her bandaged arms as though the memory of their violence remained visible. M's mind whirled. He'd heard of lost gold claims and old prospector tales all his life, enough to fill a library. Most turned out to be nothing more than tall tales. Yet he also knew the occasional rumor proved astonishingly real, unleashing chaos when folks rushed in with greed-lust in their eyes. Ruby's voice broke the silence. "Well, Miss Alcott, for now you just rest. You're safe here. Emerson can handle the rest if you choose to share more." Marguerite nodded gratefully. "I don't want to endanger you. These men are dangerous." M waved a dismissive hand. "I can handle myself, and this ranch is well guarded. Besides, we have neighbors and friends who can help if things get hairy." She studied him, as though trying to measure the truth in his words. "Thank you," she said quietly. In the days that followed, Marguerite recovered slowly. Her bruise-flecked skin regained some warmth, and she was able to walk around the ranch house with careful steps. She was struck by the wide open fields, the neat rows of stables, the sun-bleached wooden fences, Thunder Creek's rolling pastures, and the gentle lull of cattle lowing provided a strange sense of comfort, as though she'd stumbled upon a peaceful haven amid her turmoil. Still, tensions flickered beneath the calm. Marguerite's father's old journal was gone, lost in the wreck, or stolen by the outlaws who attacked her. The only piece of the puzzle she had left was the memory of the pages. She told M that a single word, albatross, was scribbled repeatedly in her father's notes, as if it were a key. She also recalled references to Eagle Rock and the ravine by the black pine. None of it was precise, but it hinted at a place that might be hidden from prying eyes. M tried to keep a level head, but curiosity gnawed at him. If this gold truly existed, it could change lives. It could also bring trouble. And he already sensed trouble was coming. Indeed, while Marguerite healed and the ranch bustled with day-to-day activities, a darker presence drew closer. There were footprints spotted near the riverbank horses' hoofprints that didn't belong to any local ranchers. Murmurs of strangers passing through town, asking questions about a dark-haired woman. Soon, the Big Hole Valley would see a reckoning. The glint of gold can do that to people. Turn an ordinary day into a life-or-death standoff. For M. McAllister, it was only a matter of time before that newfound quiet in Marguerite's eyes gave way to gunfire on the horizon. News traveled fast in frontier country, where a fresh rumor was as welcome as a stiff drink after a long day's ride. In the days after Marguerite's arrival, M began hearing unsettling tidbits from passing traders and neighbors, word of unfamiliar men lurking around, asking about any new faces in the valley. One such trader, old Nick Dooley, came by the ranch with his mule train delivering feed and salt licks. He was a wiry fellow whose silver moustache twitched when he was nervous. After tying his mule to the hitching post, he pulled Em aside with a conspiratorial nod. "Heard from a fella at the saloon in Jackson." Nick said in a hushed tone that a couple of hard cases have been sniffing around. "They're hunting a woman, dark hair, mid-20s. Sound familiar?" Em's jaw tightened. He gestured for Nick to follow him to the barn, away from the prying ears of ranch hands. "What else did they say?" Nick shrugged. "Not much, but they looked mean enough to skin a rattler with their teeth. Claim they was Pinkerton men on official business, but the way they carried themselves said otherwise. Guns for hire, maybe." Em felt a stone lodge in his gut. If these men were the same ones who attacked Marguerite, it was only a matter of time before they traced her to the ranch. "Thanks, Nick," he said. "Keep your eyes open." After Nick departed, Em circled the ranch, ensuring the hired hands stayed alert. He quietly armed a few of them, including Rance, instructing them to keep watch for strangers. Guns were a last resort, but out here, when trouble came knocking, a swift response saved lives. That evening, with the setting sun painting the sky gold and scarlet, Em found Marguerite seated on the porch, wrapped in a shawl. She stared at the horizon, her silhouette stark against the brilliant colors of twilight. "Lovely evening," he said, stepping beside her. "But I have some news." She sighed as though suspecting the worst. "They've found me, haven't they?" "Not yet," Em answered carefully. "But they're looking. We'll do what we can to keep you safe." Marguerite's lips twisted in a sad, half-smile. "I've brought trouble to your doorstep. Perhaps I should move on, and find a place to hide." Em shook his head. "No. If you ride out alone, you'll be an easy target on the open plains. Your best bet is here where we can stand together. I've got men watching the roads, especially near the river." Her eyes misted. "Thank you, Em. I'll never forget your kindness." He laid a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm betting my father, God rest his soul, would have done the same. The ranch has always been a refuge for folks in need." A faint rustle behind them made them turn. Rance stepped out, removing his hat respectfully. "Em, there's a rider on the ridge approaching the main gate. Says he's from the sheriff's office in Dillon. Should we let him in?" Em and Marguerite exchanged looks. "We can't afford to turn away lawmen, especially not in these circumstances." "Let's see what he wants," Em replied. Minutes later, they greeted a dusty, middle-aged deputy named Calvin Bates. With a polite doff of his hat, Bates explained he'd been sent from Dillon to track down any sign of fugitives or stolen property. He showed a battered identification badge, had reports of some outlaw types stirring up trouble near the Big Hole. Bates said, eyeing them closely. "You folks seen anything suspicious?" Em's expression remained neutral. "Only rumors. We keep watch, but we've no outlaws here." Bates shifted his weight in the saddle. "I'd like to have a look around if you don't mind. Strictly routine." Em tensed. The last thing he wanted was an outsider snooping about. But refusing a deputy's request outright might raise suspicion. "We don't have secrets here, Deputy. You're welcome to look around. Our foreman will show you the barns and bunkhouses." Marguerite stood silently off to the side, her head down. Her hair pulled up in a loose bun partially shielded her face. Deputy Bates cast a casual glance her way, but seemed uninterested. She was just another woman on a large ranch, as far as he knew. Em accompanied Bates on a cursory tour. The deputy asked pointed questions about whether they'd seen any travelers. Em explained a few traders and peddlers had come by, but no one that fit the outlaw description. Eventually, satisfied or simply bored, Bates thanked them and rode off into the waning daylight. Once the dust of his horse's hooves settled, Rance let out a low whistle. That was too close for comfort. He may not be connected to your woman's pursuers, but it still rattles the nerves. Marguerite stepped forward, wrapping her shawl tighter. I recognized that badge style. The man who attacked me also had a deputy's badge, but it was a counterfeit. Pinkertons sometimes make false badges to intimidate people. It's possible these men might pose as lawmen. M's stomach churned. So we could have real lawmen and fake lawmen sniffing around. Let's keep our heads on a swivel. Despite the tension, life at Thunder Creek had to go on. Calves needed feeding, fences needed mending, and the harvest was coming. Yet an undercurrent of dread seeped into every chore. Marguerite practiced walking more steadily, determined to recover. She studied the ranch's layout, working out escape routes just in case. M spotted her practicing a hidden gun draw with a small Derringer pistol Ruby procured from a trunk. The once vulnerable stranger was preparing for battle. Sure enough, as the sun dipped low one evening, the hush that settled over the ranch was fraught with anticipation. In the coming days, riders would arrive bearing ill intent, spurred by the whisper of gold. A single spark could set off an inferno of violence, and behind it all was Marguerite's father's old legacy, waiting to be claimed or to claim those who dared seek it. The next day dawned bright and hot. A humid wind swept in from the west, stirring the fields and hinting at a summer storm. M and Marguerite rode out in the early morning to survey the far edges of the ranch. She insisted on accompanying him, not wanting to stay cooped up in the house like a caged bird. M hesitated at first, but finally relented when he saw determination burning in her eyes. They rode side by side, Clementine carrying M and a gentle sorrel mare named Lady for Marguerite. M took the lead, pointing out the landmarks, the gullies, and the barbed wire fences that marked the ranch boundary. Marguerite listened quietly occasionally, squinting at the horizon as if searching for something. "Does any of this match your father's descriptions?" M asked gently. She shrugged. "He wrote of soaring ridges, a place near the confluence of two rivers. This area is close to Big Hole, but I'm not sure if it's the spot. His notes mentioned a ravine with black pine trees. Do you have pines like that around here?" M shook his head. "Not on this ranch. Most of what we've got is cottonwood willow and sparse evergreens up in the high draws." They continued on, weaving through a patch of tall grass that rustled against their horses' legs. Suddenly, Marguerite stiffened in the saddle, pointing. M followed her gaze to see fresh tracks crossing the meadow heading toward the back gate that led to a network of old wagon trails. M slid off Clementine and knelt by the tracks, brushing his fingertips over the dried earth. "3 horses, maybe 4, he said, frowning. "Recently 2. Could be travelers." Marguerite's face was drawn, her voice low. "Or them." A tense moment passed. M signaled for them to stay quiet as he scanned the perimeter. No movement, no dust clouds indicating riders. But the tracks told a story. They were being trottool. They continued their inspection of the ranch, more cautious now. Eventually they circled back, reaching the barn around midday. Rance met them with a look of grim determination. "We had a visitor while you were gone." "A man named Otis Trask," he said, the name making Marguerite's eyes widen. "Claims he's the rightful owner of a stolen map. Says he's chasing a thief, a woman with dark hair." Rance glanced at Marguerite apologetically. She swallowed hard. "Trask," she whispered, color draining from her face. He was one of the men on the raft, the ringleader. M's jaw clenched. "And what did you tell him?" "Rance." The foreman spat on the ground. "Told him I didn't know no such woman. He tried to push past me, but I had a shotgun in plain sight. He backed off, said he'd be back with official paperwork. He left a threat dangling something about how you'd regret standing in his way." M looked at Marguerite. "We can't keep you hidden forever. Trask will push, maybe even bring guns. Or false lawmen, like you said." She nodded, her expression grave. "Then it's time I told you everything. Not just about the gold, but also about who I really am." With Rance standing guard, M and Marguerite retreated to the main house. In the parlor, Marguerite paced restlessly, her hands rubbing together as though trying to smooth out her anxiety. "My father was Bryce Alcott, but my mother was Josephine Trask." She paused, studying M's reaction. Yes, the same Trask family from back east. A wealthy clan that built a reputation on the black market, smuggling and sometimes murder disguised as accidents. Otis Trask is my mother's cousin. He's been after me for years, believing I possess a secret family treasure. Unfortunately, the gold claim in my father's journal proved more than just a rumor. Otis saw enough to know it could be worth a fortune. He wants it all. M digested this. So this is a family feud over gold. Marguerite's cheeks reddened with anger. My mother fled that life when she met my father. She wanted to escape the corruption, but Otis resented them, called her a traitor to the family. When my father died, we struggled. Then I found his journal a few months ago and started searching for the claim. She sank into an armchair, her shoulders sagging. Otis ambushed me, tried to force me to reveal everything. I took a chance on that raft to slip away before he could get me to sign over the rights to the claim. But he caught me anyway. M nodded slowly. So that's why you ended up in the river. His mind churned, formulating a plan. We can't let Trask push us around. If he's forging paperwork, we need the real law on our side. Marguerite looked up, eyes brimming with hope and fear. But who can we trust? He might have local officials in his pocket. M stood pacing to the window. Outside the ranch, hands moved with purpose, reinforcing fences, double-checking firearms. A sense of destiny hung in the air. I know someone who might help if he's still around. A friend in Virginia City who once worked under Sheriff Henry Plummer before that fiasco. His name's Francis Doyle. He's a straight shooter. M turned back to Marguerite. If we send word, maybe he can pull some strings. Get the real law out here. Or at least provide documentation that your father's claim belongs to you. That is, if you want to file it properly. Marguerite's eyes gleamed with sudden determination. If the gold is truly there, I'm the rightful heir. But more than that, I want to end Otis Trask's hold over me. I'm tired of running. She nodded, steeling herself. Yes. Let's do it. M called for Rance, who sent one of their fastest riders to deliver a letter to Francis Doyle in Virginia City. Time was of the essence. Trask would return, likely with guns, possibly with forged documents claiming ownership of the ranch or the land around it. The only thing they could do now was prepare to defend themselves. That night, storms rolled in across the mountains, lightning illuminating the foothills. M and Marguerite stood on the porch, the wind whipping her hair around her face. For a moment, they shared a look that transcended fear. He gently placed a hand on her arm. No matter what happens, we face it together," he said softly. She nodded, eyes shining. In that flicker of lightning, Em saw something in her strength and vulnerability woven together, the resilience of a woman who refused to be broken. Fate had set them on this path. The echo of thunder across the plains was like a drumbeat, heralding the battles to come. The storm arrived in full force the following day, but it wasn't just the wind and rain that pummeled the Big Hole Valley. Otis Trask returned, bringing with him a half-dozen rough-looking men. The sight of them coming down the ranch road set every hired hand on edge. Em stood at the front porch, shotgun cradled in his arms. Marguerite lingered just inside the doorway, out of sight, but ready to step forward if needed. Rance and 2 other hands flanked M rifles at the ready. The tension crackled like a summer lightning storm. Otis Trask was a lean man, with sharp features and eyes that glittered like broken glass. He wore a fine suit, ill-suited for ranch life, now splattered with mud. He halted his horse a few yards from the porch, tipping his hat sarcastically. "Afternoon," Otis drawled. "I'm here on official business. According to these documents," he flourished a stack of papers, "this ranch is harboring a wanted criminal. Marguerite Alcott, who stands accused of theft." A low growl rumbled from M's chest. "This ranch harbors no criminals, Trask." Otis feigned disappointment. "You sure I've got statements from a witness claiming Ms. Alcott stole an important map from her father's estate? She's been forging claims, scamming honest folks." M took a step down from the porch, the barrel of his shotgun angled just enough to send a message. "If you were honest, you'd let the sheriff handle it. But you're not after justice. You're after gold." Otis's lips curled into a thin smile. "So she told you, did she?" "Couldn't keep her mouth shut." He turned to his men. "Here's the deal, boys. This rancher is obstructing the law. We either arrest the woman, or we put them all down." A hush swept over the yard. Lightning flashed in the dark clouds overhead, thunder rolling in the distance. One of Otis's men reached for his revolver, but Rance cocked his rifle in warning, and the man froze. The tension was a hair's breadth from erupting into a bloodbath. Marguerite stepped onto the porch, ignoring M's protest. She faced Otis with squared shoulders. "Your documents are as fake as your loyalty to this family, Otis. My father discovered that gold and I have every right to claim it." Otis let out a mocking laugh. "You're a fool, Marguerite. Wandering around thinking you can file claims without the resources to back them. That gold belongs to the Trask family, not some half-breed who can't keep her mouth shut." His eyes glinted with menace. Anger flared in Marguerite's cheeks. She clenched her fists, fighting the urge to snap back. Instead, she drew herself up. "This ends now, Otis. We've sent word to Francis Doyle in Virginia City. He's a reputable official who won't be swayed by your bribes. If you harm anyone here, you'll hang." Otis's face darkened. He spat on the ground, then looked to his men. "We'll be back," he snarled. "And when we come, you'd best hand her over, or we'll burn this place to the ground." With that, he turned his horse sharply, and the gang rode off, leaving a swirl of dust in their wake. M exhaled, heart pounding. He could feel Marguerite trembling beside him. Rance lowered his rifle, exchanging looks with the other ranch hands. No one spoke for several seconds as the storm rumbled overhead. Finally, M spoke. "Everyone stay on high alert. They might come back sooner than we think." Rance nodded. "I'll have the men set up rotations through the night. We'll barricade the outbuildings if needed." Marguerite stepped away from the porch, face drawn. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to involve you in a war." M shook his head. "You didn't bring this on yourself. Otis did. And we won't stand by while bullies threaten our home." He tried to smile, though his heart felt heavy. "We're ranchers, but we're not pushovers." For the rest of the afternoon, M. Rance and the hired hands fortified the ranch. They lined up wagons to create a makeshift barricade near the front gate, piled crates and sacks of grain to form protective cover around the main house. Ruby stashed extra medical supplies and fresh water in the cellar, just in case the confrontation became a siege. As twilight fell, the wind whipped across the fields, and rain began to pelt the roofs with hollow thumps. Lightning illuminated the yard in ghostly flashes. Marguerite found M in the barn, checking the saddles on their best horses. "If Otis has any sense, he'll wait until the storm passes before making his move," M said, running a hand over Clementine's flank. "But I don't think he's a patient man." Marguerite nodded, arms wrapped around herself. "He's desperate. He'll do anything to get that gold, and if he can't, he'll ensure no one else does." M paused, noticing the fear in her eyes. Gently, he placed a hand on her arm. "We'll make it through this. We just need to hold out until Francis Doyle arrives with the legal backing. Then Otis won't have a leg to stand on." She smiled thinly. "I hope you're right." The night wore on, lightning streaking the sky like shattered glass. In the glow of lanterns, M and Marguerite shared a quiet moment in the kitchen. Ruby insisted they both eat something, though neither had much appetite. Outside the ranch, hands rotated in pairs, rifles in hand, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Midnight came and went, the storm pounding relentlessly. Each thunderclap made Marguerite jump, but M remained steady beside her, occasionally peering out the window. Through the sheets of rain, they could barely see the outlines of the wagons that formed their defensive line. Yet as the darkest hours of the night dragged on, no attackers emerged. Perhaps Otis had indeed chosen to wait out the storm. Perhaps he planned a dawn raid, or maybe he'd gone to gather more men. When the first faint light of morning broke, M and Marguerite were huddled in the parlor, exhaustion creasing their faces. M fought to keep his eyes open. Suddenly a shout came from outside. He jumped up, heart pounding. Rance burst in moments later, water streaming from his hat. "Rider on the ridge," he panted. "Not Otis. Looks like a messenger from Virginia City." Hope surged in M's chest. Could this be Francis Doyle's people arriving at last? Marguerite hurried to the window, glimpsing a lone horseman picking his way down the muddy trail, holding a white kerchief in one hand, as if to show peaceful intentions. M grabbed his slicker and stepped out into the rain to greet the rider. It was a young deputy wearing a legitimate badge that glinted even in the gloom. He carried a sealed envelope addressed to Emerson McAllister. The official stamp of Virginia City's courthouse was pressed into the wax. M's hands shook as he tore it open. Inside a single note, in Francis Doyle's precise handwriting: "On my way with reinforcements. Hold tight. Gold claim can be validated with your testimony. Keep Ms. Alcott safe at all costs. Doyle." Relief warred with dread. Reinforcements were coming, but would they arrive in time? Otis Trask was poised to strike, and the ranch was still exposed. M wiped the raindrops from his face, looking to the horizon where storm clouds still loomed. He only hoped they could hold out until Doyle's help arrived, and that none of them would pay the ultimate price for this fortune in gold. The next 2 days passed in a haze of tension and sleepless vigilance. The storm finally abated, leaving behind muddy roads and swollen streams. With the ranch's defenses in place, Em and the hired hands maintained constant patrols, scanning the horizon for any sign of Otis Trask and his gang. Marguerite tried to help around the ranch, determined not to be idle. She pitched in with cooking, caring for livestock, and cleaning rifles. Though she moved with a slight limp, her injuries still healing, her spirit burned bright. Em admired her tenacity. She was no longer a frightened stranger in the river. She was part of Thunder Creek's family now. Rance checked the approaches relentlessly, occasionally riding to the nearest neighbor's homestead for news. Reports trickled in that a group of outlaws had been spotted in the area, asking pointed questions about the ranch. The neighbors, some of whom had deep respect for the McAllisters, sent word that they'd stand with Em if trouble arrived on their doorstep. In the evenings, Em and Marguerite sat by the fireplace, quietly trading stories about their lives, before fate thrust them together. Em recounted how he'd grown up on the ranch, traveling occasionally to big towns like Helena or Butte, but always drawn back to Thunder Creek. Marguerite spoke of her father's gold-seeking adventures, how they lived out of saddlebags, drifting from one boom town to another. Despite the volatility she'd cherished those times, seeing new frontiers with a man who was equal parts dreamer and pragmatist. And then he died, she said softly, her gaze lost in the flicker of the fire. We were near Deadwood. He caught a fever, and no doctor could save him. She swallowed hard. I was 19. Otis tried to take me in, but I knew what that would mean, joining his schemes, letting him use me as a pawn. I ran. Lived on the move ever since. Em listened, sympathy and admiration etched across his face. You've come a long way, Marguerite Alcott. You deserve a home. She sighed. I never thought I'd find one out here on a ranch in Montana. But you and your people have shown me more kindness than I ever imagined. A glimmer in her eyes made him inhale sharply. Before he could speak, a commotion outside shattered the moment. Rance burst through the front door, panting. Riders coming from the south. I can't tell if it's Trask or Doyle's men. Em sprang into action, grabbing his rifle. Marguerite hurried after him, snatching her derringer from the table. They joined the ranch hands on the front porch, scanning the horizon. A plume of dust rose along the main road, the silhouettes of horses approaching rapidly. As they drew closer, a flash of metal caught the sunlight badges. Em's heart lurched with both relief and trepidation. Was it the legitimate law, or more of Otis's counterfeit men? Finally, the lead rider raised his hand in greeting. Em recognized Francis Doyle, a tall figure with sandy brown hair and a stern yet honest face. Behind him rode a contingent of deputies, each bearing the official insignia of Virginia City's Circuit Court. Em relaxed, stepping off the porch to meet them. Doyle dismounted, clasping Em's hand in a firm shake. Good to see you in one piece, McAllister. Heard you've got a hornet's nest brewing here. Em nodded. That's putting it lightly. Come inside. There's a lot to discuss. The group filed into the ranch house, and Ruby hastily brewed coffee. Doyle introduced the deputies, each of whom seemed earnest, their gazes assessing every corner of the room. Marguerite stepped forward, and Doyle nodded respectfully. So you're the famous Marguerite Alcott, he said. Francis Doyle at your service. Em's letter said you have a claim to file a major gold find left by your father. Marguerite swallowed, glancing at Em for reassurance. He gave a slight nod. Yes, she said. I believe the deposit is near Bannock, in a place referred to as Dead Man's Gorge, though I haven't confirmed the exact location. My father's journal had directions, but it's lost. Otis Trask stole it. I only recall fragments. Doyle's mouth tightened. Then we need to retrieve it. I've got the backing of the Virginia City Circuit Judge to validate your father's claim if we can get proof. Meanwhile, we can charge Otis Trask with assault, attempted murder, and anything else that applies, provided we have evidence. M let out a slow breath. Evidence might be tricky. He's cunning, and he has forged documents. Doyle nodded gravely. Then our best bet is to catch him red-handed. If we can prove he's forging legal claims or impersonating law enforcement, we'll have him. I've also brought along affidavits from old associates of your father who can attest that Bryce Alcott discovered gold. That combined with Miss Alcott's testimony should be enough for a judge. Suddenly, a ranch hand burst in. Riders spotted, he gasped. North side. Looks like at least 10 men. They're heading this way fast. Doyle's deputies tensed. That's likely Trask, one of them muttered. M's pulse quickened. We've got barricades, but they won't hold back 10 men indefinitely. Doyle, unflinching, called out to his deputies. Men form a perimeter around the house. Keep your guns holstered unless they open fire. M and the ranch hands took positions, doubling up behind crates and wagon carts. Rainwater still pooled in the yard's low spots, the ground slick with mud. Marguerite insisted on taking a spot near M. Derringer, loaded. The thunder of hooves grew louder, resonating through the valley. Otis Trask and his men burst into view, splashing mud as they came to a halt outside the gates. Trask's eyes narrowed at the sight of so many armed deputies. He let out a bitter laugh. So, Marguerite, you've found yourself some fancy law help. Doesn't change a thing. I have legal claim over that gold. Hand over the map. Marguerite stepped forward, voice steady. You have a stolen journal, Otis, and we have Francis Doyle here, an official from Virginia City, ready to hear your side if you have a legitimate one. Otis sneered. Get out of my way. I'm taking what's rightfully mine. Anyone who stands in my way is dead. Doyle spoke up, his tone clipped. Otis Trask. I have warrants for your arrest on suspicion of assault and attempted murder. Surrender peacefully, and you'll be given a fair trial. For a beat, Otis's expression flashed uncertainty. Then rage twisted his features. He yanked his pistol free and fired a shot into the air. His men followed suit, spurring their horses forward. Time slowed. M raised his rifle, returning fire. Doyle's deputies fanned out bullets whizzing past. Ranch hands huddled behind cover, steadying their aim. Chaos engulfed the yard horses, rearing and screaming in the crossfire. Marguerite ducked behind a barrel, watching the firefight with wide eyes. She caught sight of Otis weaving through the barrage, heading toward the house. He urged his horse forward, determined to claim her or kill her. M took careful aim, but Otis fired first. The bullet slammed into a wagon wheel near M's head, splintering wood. M dove aside. In the fray, Marguerite suddenly found herself exposed. Otis's pistol swung toward her. She squeezed her Derringer's trigger, but the shot went wide, lost in the chaos. In that heart-stopping moment, time seemed to freeze. Otis had the advantage, an echo of triumph in his eyes. Then a single gunshot roared. Otis jerked in his saddle, a red stain blossoming across his chest. His horse reared, sending him crashing to the mud. Marguerite looked over in shock. Francis Doyle lowered his smoking revolver. The yard fell silent except for the groans of wounded men. One by one, Trask's gang members dropped their guns, realizing the fight was lost. M rushed to Marguerite, scanning her for injuries. She shook her head, trembling with adrenaline. I'm fine, she managed. Together they stepped toward Otis, who lay gasping in the mud. Doyle knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. "Still alive," Doyle muttered. "Get him medical attention. He'll stand trial if he makes it." Marguerite stood over her fallen cousin, a swirl of emotions flickering in her eyes. Relief, sorrow, finality. With Trask subdued, her nightmare might finally be over. Em wrapped an arm around her shoulder, pulling her close. Rain began to drizzle again, the droplets mingling with the blood-soaked earth. The cost of the gold had been high, but at last the battle for it had reached a turning point. The wounded were carried into the barn, turned into a makeshift infirmary. Ruby and 2 deputies treated injuries while Otis Trask, unconscious and bound, was kept under close guard. Francis Doyle took charge, ensuring Trask's gang was disarmed and detained. Inside the house, Em and Marguerite sat at the kitchen table, exhaustion weighing heavily on them. Doyle entered with a mud-stained leather pouch. "This was on Otis," he said, placing it down. Marguerite opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was her father's journal, water-damaged, but legible. Her breath caught as she turned the pages, revealing hand-drawn maps and notes pointing toward Dead Man's Gorge. "It's real," she whispered. "He found it." Em scanned the sketch's quartz outcrops, a canyon near black pine forests, and a cave mouth. The detail made it clear Bryce Alcott hadn't been chasing a dream. He'd found something worth fighting for. Doyle nodded. "This will be enough for the judge to validate the claim. But you'll need to decide what comes next." Marguerite's voice steadied. "I want to do it right, file legally, no more bloodshed. If there's gold, it should help the community. Schools, roads, real good." Em placed his hand over hers. "We'll figure it out, step by step." Outside the ranch, hands and deputies rounded up the last of Trask's men. Some had fled, but most surrendered. Doyle dispatched riders to fetch a judge from Virginia City and alert authorities in Helena. The days that followed brought a strange calm. Under watch, even Otis's condition began to stabilize. Meanwhile, Marguerite pored over the journal. One evening, Em found her standing by the corral, eyes on the horizon. "Hard to believe how fast life can turn," she said. "Weeks ago, I was half dead in a river. Now I'm dreaming about building something." Em joined her, leaning on the fence. "My father used to say, what we build is what we leave behind. If we're careful, this gold can help people, not ruin them." "I want that," she said softly. "And I don't want to do it alone." Em hesitated, then reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Then stay." She stepped closer. Their kiss came gently, naturally born of survival hope and unspoken promise. The next morning, Judge Winfield Pierce arrived from Virginia City. The ranch parlor became a courtroom. Doyle laid out forged documents and assault charges against Otis. Marguerite testified about her father's journal and the attack. Em described the raid and the threats. By day's end, Judge Pierce ruled in Marguerite's favor, recognizing her rightful claim to the deposit at Dead Man's Gorge. Otis, still under guard, faced a list of charges if he lived long enough to stand trial. Justice at last had found its way to Thunder Creek, and as the sun set, Marguerite stood with Em on the porch, a future taking shape, not in gold, but in the bond between them. One built from courage, trust, and the promise of something enduring. As summer gave way to early autumn, Montana's hills turned golden and amber. The chaos from Otis Trask's assault began to fade. Wounded gang members were sent off under guard, and Otis himself, still clinging to life, was loaded onto a wagon bound for Virginia City, flanked by armed deputies. With the danger receding, Marguerite focused on confirming her father's claim. She spent hours in M's study, cross-referencing Bryce Alcott's notes with local maps. When she felt ready, she, M. Rance, and a few trusted hands set out for Bannock, accompanied by 2 deputies to act as witnesses. They traveled through rugged country, rolling grasslands, and pine forests until the remnants of Bannock came into view. Marguerite felt her heart stir at the ghostly gold camp where her father had once dreamed big. At dawn, guided by her father's notes, they pushed deeper into the canyon. Soon they spotted it, a rock shaped like an eagle's wing. Nearby, a narrow cleft and the towering black pine marked the location described in the journal. With cautious steps, they reached a shallow cave at the base of the hill. Rance chipped away at a quartz outcrop near the entrance. At first, it seemed like ordinary rock until one of the deputies crouched low and shone a lantern along a vein glittering with gold. Gold, he confirmed quietly. Marguerite's knees nearly buckled. M steadied her, laughing with relief. The legend wasn't just a family tale, it was real. Her father had found it. And now so had she. They collected samples and marked the site. It wasn't just a flash of gold dust, it was a vein rich enough to support a legitimate operation. Marguerite, still overwhelmed, turned to M as the team made camp by the gorge. "I wish my father could see this," she said, watching the stars. M gently clasped her hand. "He led you here. He's part of this moment." The next morning they rode back to Thunder Creek with samples and sworn affidavits. In Helena, Marguerite's claim would be filed formally. Part of the profits, she vowed, would fund schools and infrastructure, real improvements for the people who'd shown her kindness. At the ranch, Ruby hugged her fiercely, then scolded her for going off so soon after healing. Rance posted the findings, and the ranch buzzed with the news the gold was real and it belonged to Marguerite. But in truth, it belonged to more than just her. Thunder Creek had become her home, and M her anchor. They stood side by side, knowing the future wouldn't be easy. But it would be theirs, shaped not by greed, but by purpose, love, and the promise of what they'd build together. And as dawn rose over the plains, gilding the fields in light, the legacy of gold faded beneath something far brighter hope. Friends, if you've made it to the end of this tumultuous saga, thank you for riding along on this wild journey. From a life-and-death rescue on the Big Hole River, to the scorching gunfights over a hidden gold deposit, Emerson McAllister and Marguerite Alcott showed us that true riches go beyond glittering metal. Their bond was forged through danger trials, and finally triumph, not only uncovering a legendary gold claim, but also discovering that love and unity can tame even the harshest frontier. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this Old West adventure. Did the showdown leave your heart pounding? Are you curious what happens next for the Thunder Creek family? Please hit that like button and share your comments. And of course, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on more thrilling tales. Together, let's keep the spirit of the Wild West alive, one story at a time.